Alright, so you'll remember at the end of the previous video when we were talking about solving two-step equations, and we'd gone through and we talked about there are basically two steps here. We isolate the variable term and then we isolate the variable. And remember, isolate means get by itself. And we did a couple of examples, and at the very end we talked about why we isolate the variable term. And we're basically talking about the order of operations, the way that things were done. So they did something first and second, so we undo the second thing and then we undo the first thing. So doing it or thinking about it that way can be helpful at times, especially on a problem like we're going to see next. So again, this is part 2 of solving two-step equations. And now that we know how to do some basic one and two-step equations, we're going to look at something that's a little bit more complicated. And I want you to think about if we were to solve this using that two-step technique, like isolate the variable term and then isolate the variable. Think about how many variable terms there are here. So we want to get the variable by itself, but terms are separated by pluses and minuses. Now notice this is a fraction bar right here, and hopefully that rings a bell when we talked about order of operations. That's kind of an exception to the order of operations. There is only one variable term. This entire thing is one term. So the variable term is already by itself, but it's important to recognize the order in which the operations need to be done so we know how to undo those. So what was the order that things were done here? So if we take a look and we were to plug a number in for x, we would take that number, and the fraction bar breaks it into a top and bottom. So we would figure out the top, figure out the bottom, and then we would do the division. So if we plugged a number in right here, the very first thing that we would do is we would add 1. So the first thing that was done to x is they added 1. Once they added 1, the second thing they did is they divided by 2. So if we're going to undo those things, we're going to undo them in the opposite order. So we're going to undo dividing by 2 by multiplying by 2. So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. Now you'll notice what happens here. The dividing by 2 here cancels with the multiplying by 2. 2 divided by 2 are 1. Those cancel to be 1. So what we end up with is just the numerator, just the top, x plus 1. And then over on this side is a 6. Well, now we already undid this one. We got that one taken care of. Now we need to undo adding 1. So to undo adding 1, we're going to subtract 1. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. Those cancel to be 0, so we end up with x equals, let's see, 6 minus 1 is 5. So that's the answer to this problem. Now, if it is the answer, we can plug it back in and it should make the equation true. So let's see what happens when we plug it in. So if I plug it in right there, let's see what we get. So we would have 5 plus 1 divided by 2 equals 3. Let's see if that works. Well, this would be 5 plus 1. That's going to be 6. 6 divided by 2 does equal 3, so that checks out. So when you see that fraction bar right there, and we've got more than one term on the top or the bottom, it's important to recognize how to do those. And people tend to struggle with these, so we're going to practice on several of these before we get started here. So these are actually the first couple of examples here. So let's take a look. So we're going to use inverse operations. So you'll notice that we've got this fraction bar here, and that kind of groups the two of these together on the top and then that one on the bottom. So that's kind of our grouping symbol right there. So we're going to undo the division first. We're going to isolate the two of those together. We're going to isolate the top first. So we're going to multiply this side by -5 and we're going to multiply this side by -5. And if we do that, let's see what we get here. We'd have the -5 and then dividing by -5. Those are going to cancel each other out. We're going to end up with an x plus 4 over here, and then we end up with a -30. And let's see, we need to undo adding 4, so we're going to subtract 4. So we end up with x equals, let's see, -34. So x equals -34 is the answer to that one. Now, you might just say, well, gosh, what if we did do them in the other order? What if we did this? So we went back and we looked at the original problem, x plus 4 over -5. And you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it in this order. I'm going to undo that. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. Those will cancel each other out. Still got the dividing by -5. Let's see, this would be 6 minus 4. That would be 2. So I'm going to times both sides by -5. And we end up with x equals -10. Well, let's check and see. If that was the solution, it should make the equation true. So let's see what happens if we plug it in. So if I plug it in right there, we get negative 10 plus 4 over negative 5, and we want to know if that equals 6. Let's see, negative 10 plus 4, that would be negative 6 over negative 5 equals negative 6. This is saying negative 6 divided by negative 5 is, positive 6 is positive 6. And there's no way that can be true, because 6 divided into 5 pieces, yeah, it's going to be positive, but it's going to be like 1 1/6. It's not going to be the right answer. So this does not work. Okay, not going to work there. All right, so make sure you're doing them in the correct order, and let's bust through and do some of these. So these are grouped together by that fraction bar. So we're going to undo the division by 9. So we're going to times this side by 9, and we're going to times this side by 9. Again, I'll put that second factor in parentheses. So we get negative 18 over here, and x minus 2 over here. Then we're going to add 2 to both sides to undo subtracting 2. Those cancel to be 0. So we get x over on this side, and then we've got negative 18 minus 2. That's going to be negative 20.
Did you catch my mistake? I made a mistake right here. Just a little sign error. I put a minus 2 right here when I should have put a plus 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a plus right there. That's going to change the integer problem that we're doing here from, they used to be the same sign, now they're different signs. So I find the difference is 16, and the bigger one is negative, so the answer on this one's negative 16. So everybody makes mistakes. That's why we've got erasers with pencils and stuff like that. But again, going back and checking out the work, we could kind of see where that mistake was. So here's the right answer. The answer on this one is x equals negative 16.
Integer problems we're doing. We're combining, we're multiplying integers, dividing integers, all sorts of stuff. Really important that you're good with integer operations so you can do these more accurately and more quickly. So let's take a look at this one. Here's the variable term. So we want to isolate that. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So this is going to be 16. Remember, those cancel to be 0, so I get negative 8y over here. And then we need to undo that timesing by negative 8. So remember, that's implied multiplication. So we're going to divide by negative 8 on both sides. Those cancel to be a positive 1, which is what we want. And a positive divided by a negative is negative, and 16 divided by 8 is 2. So there's our answer on that one. And let's look at this one right here. Here's the variable term. So we're going to get rid of that 10 by adding 10. So that's going to be a negative 12 over there. And once I cancel those to be 0, I'm left with a negative a. Again, a couple ways to take care of this. We can multiply or divide both sides by a negative, or we can just say, hey, I don't want negative a, I want its opposite, positive a. So we don't want negative 12, we want its opposite, positive 12, and there's the answer. Showing that type of work on a test or a quiz would be just fine. All right, this problem right here. Again, that kind of groups the two of those together. So we are going to isolate the numerator by getting rid of that dividing by 2. Those are going to cancel to be a 1, so we get negative 5 plus b equals negative 8. And then we're going to undo that by adding 5. So we're going to have b over here because those cancel to be 0. And negative 3. And again, for every one of these, if you wanted to plug it back into the original equation, check and make sure that it works there. Now I've got an asterisk by f for a reason. See if you can think of what it is. Again, those are grouped together, so I'm going to get rid of that fraction bar first. I'm going to do multiplying by negative 3. Cancel will be a 1, so we've got 1 times this stuff, so negative x minus 2 equals negative 30. Once I do those integer operations there. Isolate that variable term, so I'm going to add 2. Cancel to be 0. And let's see, that's negative 28. And we don't want negative x, we want its opposite. We want positive x, so we don't want negative 28. We want its opposite, positive 28. So there's the answer. Now, if you'll notice, this one has an asterisk by it for this reason. First step was multiplying by negative 3. Next step was getting rid of that subtracting 2 by adding 2. And then we actually had a third step here. So this was actually a 3-step equation. All right. So we've actually done a 3-step equation at this point. Now, I can't emphasize this enough. You are really going to need these equation solving skills. So it's used in every single math class you're going to take from now on. So it's really important that you have these skills, and it's well worth your time to master them now. So if you figure this out at this point, you're going to be much better off. You're going to be really happy you put forth the effort. And besides that, if you put forth the effort, you're going to get a good grade. So that'll be awesome. All right, good luck with the assignments.